Raya in particular and in the reign of other rulers. Let us see the questions on today's class. The accurate picture of complex socio-cultural milieu of peninsular India is presented in early Sangam literature. So write about Sangam age socio-cultural life. Anything and everything that we know about Sangam age is mostly known from literature. Some information is available about economy that we can see from Roman coins and Roman pottery that you have to again go back to post-Mauryan age. But most of the information about Sangam age is available from Sangam literature. So write about socio-cultural life. Number 2, discuss critically the main aspects of socio-cultural life under Pallavas and Cholas. So if you have two topics simultaneously, then you have to cut short your answers. Otherwise, the answer will be too big to manage. Critically examine the significance of Sangam age and Pallava period. So write about the institutions, write about entry of Brahminical culture, write about emergence of temple as an institution. So all those things you have to focus now. You just can't write social life point by point. Significance, you have to write what happened, what was the change, something that was a change was significant. Those changes you have to focus here. What are the manifestations of Tamil devotional cults? Vaishnava Bhakti, Tamil Bhakti. How do you account for their growth between 750 to 1200 AD? Social life was full of evils. Brahminical dominance was extreme. So write about social life of Pallava age. Brahminical dominance was excessive. Common Tamil people were suffering immensely. All of the Tamils were termed as Shudras by the Brahmanas who moved from North India. The sufferings of these common Tamils found expression in the form of devotional cults. Because these devotional cults revolving around Vishnu and Shiva were anti-casteism, were anti-untouchability. They were guided by the idea of equality, and they focused on direct relations between the god and devotee. So social evils, you have to focus. That will give you the idea of why the devotional cults emerge, and then write about these Tamil Bhakti sects. Give an account of the social, religious and cultural life of Vijayanagar Empire. So all the three dimensions you need to put here. Assess the contribution of Cholas to South Indian socio-cultural and religious life. So South Indian socio-cultural religious life owes a lot to Cholas because Cholas promoted Dravidian elements. So the Dravidian elements gained popularity in society. How Brahmanas continue to remain at the top, but Dravidian elements emerged very prominent in social life. Then 5 groups. Then write about progress in the field of temples, religion, Shaivism. Then you have to go back to literature. So all the 3 aspects of Cholas you need to write in this question. All these questions attempt in 300 words because South Indian questions could be in 15 markers also, could be in 20 markers, could be in 10 markers. So try to focus here on the middle length, write for 225, first words, then go to 300, and then try to put the same information in 150 words. So South Indian questions could be in 15 markers, 10 markers, as well as in 20 markers. So write accordingly. The bigger question should be for 20 markers, the smaller question should be for 10 markers. Write all these answers, upload on portal in your account, and central authority became weak, and NICAs moved out of control. Okay. Now let us look at the questions of today's class. Discuss critically the main aspects of polity and administration under Pallavas. So political system of Pallavas in its right. Evaluate the importance of contributions of Pallavas in the history of development of politico-administrative system. So what you find, language will change. For the first time, Dharma Shastra model. For the first time, powerful monarchy. For the first time, elaborate bureaucracy. For the first time, elaborate taxation system. For the first time, powerful army, navy. For the first time, strong imperialism. For the first time, elements of democracy. For the first time, local self-governing bodies. So all those elements you have to put, and the language will change. So language will be different in question number 1, question number 2. Depending on the demands of question, you have to change your language. Question number 3, so that the administrative system in India reached a very high level during Chola period. So all the features, including local administration, you have to put, they had a balance between centralization and decentralization. Number 4, doubtless it was not a free state, but it was any rate a state. This is a comment of K.A.N. Sastri, K.A. Nilakantha Sastri about Chola local bodies. So they were not having complete independence, complete autonomy, but they were having very high degree of autonomy. That's the meaning of sentence. Reflect upon the nature of local self-government institutions in Chola. This complete autonomy, but they were having very high degree of autonomy. That's the meaning of sentence. Reflect upon the nature of local self-government institutions in Chola country. So write the positives of democracy, write the negatives of democracy, and then see, in spite of the fact that democratic character of Chola local bodies was having limitations, but they were classical in nature. No other example of similar kind can be seen in contemporary history. Number 5, to what extent segmentary state model relevant for defining Vijayanagara state? So focus on common features. It was monarchical, it was centralized, it was despotic. And then come to Nayankara system. Because of Nayankara system, American historian Burton Stein opined that it was segmentary. Then you have to write that it was not. We have discussed in detail all those elements in the tribute. Number 6, discuss the salient features of political administrative system of Vijayanagara Empire. So write about Vijayanagara polity. All these questions you need to write in 300 words. That's the biggest format. Now let us see the questions of today's class. Highlight the major stages witnessed in the evolution of the Veda style of architecture. Start from the Dravidian style of architecture that flourished in South India. Style and then from the first stage, that is cave temple, to caves and rathas, then freestanding temples, that is Rajasimha style, then Nandivarman style, all these 4 under Pallavas, then to Cholas, then to Vijayanagara. All those you need to write, but in brief. Throw light on the progress in the field of art and architecture during Pallava period. So write about Pallavas only, not only temple, but also cave and rathas. Along with that is sculpture, music, dance, and painting points also need to add. Discuss the contribution of Chalukyas of Vadapi and Hoysalas of Halebidu. Halebidu is the modern name of Dwarsamudra. Dwarsamudra was the capital of Hoysalas. So write both parts here. Temple architecture reached climax of its development in the age of Vijayanagara Empire. So write about the Vijayanagara style temple architecture, the Providence style of temple architecture, and then continue to the Nayaka style also, that is also Vijayanagara. Discuss the essential features of different styles of temple architecture of Peninsular India. It means Pallavas, Mandapas, Radha temples, freestanding temples, Vesala style and Hoysala style. All those you need to write in this question with. Try to make figures. If you make diagrams, and if diagrams are looking good, that add value to your answer and you get better marks. Throw light on the progress witnessed in the field of art and architecture during Chola period. So write about Cholas, temple, sculpture, music, dance, everything. All these answers quite global in character, and as a result of that, the concept of Greater India came into existence. Chola's contribution was enormous. Now let us have a look at the questions of today's class. Discuss critically the main aspects of political administrative life of Chalukyas of Vadapi. So write about all the dimensions, all the 12 dimensions of political administrative system of Vadapi, Chalukyas. Form an estimate of cultural contribution of Cholas. So art, culture, all you need to write. Sculpture, architecture, literature, education, all those dimensions. Assess critically the achievements of Pallavas of Kanchipuram. So achievements with limitation, no secular architecture, and the subjugation or the domination of Brahmanas over the lower sections of society. That was a limitation. Critically assess the importance of Cholas in the history of South India. So all the positive we have discussed, the negative side, wars and battles. Cholas fought wars and battles continuously, and those wars and battles resulted in exhaustion of huge amount of resources and contributed to the decline of Chola Empire finally. Throw light on the essential elements of political administrative system of Rajputas. All features you have with you. Highlight the progress in the field of administration and culture. So administration culture of Chalukyas as well as Rajputas both. So when you have to combine many elements, try to write everything in precise small sentences so that you can include all the dimensions, but you can cut down the explanation. Write all these answers in 300 words. The tripartite struggle shaped the history of India in a big way. So both these struggles will be studied in today's class. After these struggles, we'll study the comparative analysis of North India and South India during post-Gupta period. Palm leaves and birch barks and copper plates, etc. So temples were playing very, very important role in cultural life. In fact, temples are the symbols of Indian cultural prosperity. That is why many temples are part of UNESCO's World Heritage Site list at present. Now let us see questions on today's class. Trace briefly the history of a struggle between Chalukyas and Pallavas. So you have to start writing about the introduction, why was the fight witnessed, little bit about the reasons, and then write about the phases, all the 3 phases. Examine the causes responsible for a struggle between Chalukyas or Vadapi and Pallavas. Bring out its importance. So it's talking about causes and significance. In this question, you do not need to write about the phases. Achieving dominance in south of India did not satisfy the ambitions of Rajputas. They also wanted to achieve dominance over Gangetic plains. So Rajputas are very, very powerful dynasty in Deccan in this age. These Rajputas fought with the contemporary rulers, Cholas, in south, and they tried to capture Kannauj by fighting with Gujara Pratiharas and Palas. So question is about tripartite struggle, and that struggle you need to write why, what were the phases, and a little bit about significance. Analyze the vibrant cultural activities in Peninsular India during 550 to 750 AD. Compare and contrast with the situation in contemporary North India. So all the three columns with all the 5 dimensions you need to write here. How far it is correct to say that a strength and vigor of Indian history during 550 to 750 in South of India, the meaning is the same. So compare, contrast, and then conclude point by point. All these answers you should write in 300 words. Class, I will introduce you to the syllabus of medieval India, and thereafter attacking India. Pragmatic Turks, these grand ideals, so responsible for the defeat of motivating tool by Rajputs to fight against the Turks. So this was also an important factor here. So these were the causes responsible for the defeat of Rajputs against Turks. Now let us have a look at the questions of today's class. Internal strife and conflict beset with personal ambitions was enough for an invitation to Ghurids to invade India. So write about the role of political factors. How internal strife or divisions among Indian rulers, personal issues like Prithviraj Chauhan kidnapping the daughter of Jaichand Singh Yogita and marrying her, all these things had exhausted their strength and vigor and contributed to defeat of Rajputs against Muhammad Ghori, so Ghurids. Defeat of Rajputs number 2 at the hands of Turks was the result not only of the weaknesses of the military system, it was also rooted in the social organization and cultural ethos. So write about the role of military forces as well as the role of social and cultural factors. Number 3, bring out the salient features of Rajput polity and social structure. So salient features of Rajput polity means what we have discussed about political factors. There was no central authority. There was no unity. There was no central standing army. There was feudal system. So all those elements which we have highlighted here as the negative elements were the features of Rajput polity. Social system again, caste-based, untouchability, full of evils, degenerated. And then to what extent were they responsible for the weaknesses of Rajputs against foreign invaders? So these factors played an important role. At the same time, write other factors, military factors, economic factors, cultural factors, the role of religion. So political, social in part number 1, and thereafter other factors in part number 2. Number 4, the inferior cavalry of Rajputs was not the only cause of the defeat at the hands of Turko-Afghan and Mughals. So the question could have Turks, Afghans and Mughals also, because Rajputs lost against Mughals also in future. The causes were the same. The scenario was largely the same. So you have to write about the role of military. That was one factor. It was not the only factor. Write role of political factors, social factors, cultural factors, religious factors, and economic factors also. Number 5, the Battle of Tarain and Chandwar laid the foundations of Turkish rule in India. So write about the victory of Turks in the Battle of Tarain and Chandwar. Causes were the same. Political factors, same. Social factors, same. Cultural factors, same. Economic factors, same. Religious factors, same. And then write about establishment of Turkish rule in India, and thereafter expansion 1197 till that time at least you can write when Bakhtiyaruddin Khilji captured Bengal and Bihar areas. All these answers you should write in 300 words. First we will study the impact of establishment of Turkish rule on India. In this class you will study the political impact, the military impact, the socio-cultural impact, the religious impact, as well as different dimensions of economic impact. Let us see the issues one by one. So impact here means Turkish rule was multidimensional. Look at the Eid Milan, dress pattern. So the impact of establishment of Turkish rule on India was multidimensional. Each and every sphere of human life was influenced by Turkish rule. Now let us have a look at the questions of today's class. Throw light on the impact of the establishment of Turkish rule. So everything what you learned is the answer to the question number 1. So you have to write in brief. Number 2, examine the extent of influence of Islam on Indian culture and civilization. So again write about the degree of change, primarily the change. Question is the same or the demands are the same. The language has to be in terms of change. Discuss the advancement in textile technology under Sultans of Delhi. So this is particularly for textiles. Number 4, examine the contribution of Sultans of Delhi to development of art, culture, literature. So all those elements of art, culture, literature you need to write here that were witnessed as a result of establishment of Turkish rule. Highlight the progress witnessed in different branches of technology in India. So here, focus should be on technology. That could be Persian wheel, that could be textile technology, book binding, or other kind of things. Number 6. In what ways the establishment of Turkish rule in India marked the beginning of a new historical phase? This establishment of Turkish rule in India is considered to be the mark of the beginning of medieval age. This medieval age was different from ancient age. So what are the changes you have seen in political life, changes in social life, changes in cultural life, changes in economy? All these changes symbolize the beginning of medieval age. Every age is characterized by its fundamental features. So these fundamental features, what you have learned, were the result of establishment of Turkish rule. That is why we say it was the beginning of a new phase, and this phase is known as medieval age. Write all these answers in 300 words. As always, upload a portal in your account. I'll check your answers. I'll send you back with remarks and feedback. Keep reading the study material that you have received. In today's class, we will study the politico-administrative system of Delhi Sultanate. In this, we will see the nature and character of political system, the issue of theocracy. Was Delhi Sultanate a theocracy? And thereafter, we will see the other different dimensions related to Iqta system, native side of Iqta system. Now, let us have a look at the questions on today's class. Bring out the main features of administrative system of Delhi Sultanate during Turko-Afghan period, or main features of Turko-Afghan political system. So you need to write all the features, continuity as well as change. Highlight the elements of change and continuity. This is a direct question. So here, first part change, second part continuity. Both the parts, one after another. Number 3, was state in Sultanate period a theocracy? So this much you need to write here. Was state under Sultanate period a theocracy? Discuss the new orientation of state policies and administrative principle under Muhammad bin Tughlaq. This we'll see in detail when we come to the topic of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Right now you can see the changes in the system, changes in the religious elements of his state, because Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq was secular in his outlook. He did not allow ulemas to interfere in political matters. But the second half we will see in detail when we come to the main topic of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. To what extent was caliphate the source and sanction to the legal authority of Sultan? So write about the relationship between caliph and Sultan in this question. Both sides, what theocratic supporters say and what non-theocratic supporters say, that is the reality in fact. Analyze the merits and demerits of Iqta system. So write about all the merits, demerits, positives, or the features or the merits. Demerits means the limitations or the negative side of the coin here. Discuss the contribution of Iqta system to the expansion and consolidation of Delhi Sultanate. So last part, significance part, you need to write here. How did Iqta system help in strengthening the foundations of Delhi Sultanate? So this is about the Razia. Let us start with introduction to Iltutmish. Kill him or replace. Even a male had that male ruler tried to behave as a sultan both in name and effect. His nobles would have killed him or replaced him with some other weak candidate to throne. So this is about Razia. Now let us see the questions on today's class. Iltutmish as real founder of Delhi Sultanate, or Iltutmish was the real founder, that should be the proper, of Delhi Sultanate. Examine the truth of this statement critically. So write about the meaning of real founder, then works of Iltutmish, what he did in different areas. So that's the meaning of critical. To what extent was he politically real founder? To what extent was he militarily real founder? To what extent was he economically real founder? So all those different dimensions you have to analyze one by one. Number 2, assess the contribution of Iltutmish to the expansion and consolidation. So write about consolidation means safeguarding from internal external threats. Consolidation, financial, administrative, military, cultural, and then expansion, how he brought new territories under control of Delhi by annexing Malwa and Sindh. Critically examine the significance of reign of Iltutmish in the history of Turko-Afghan rule. So significance of the reign of Iltutmish was that he safeguarded the newly established Turkish Indian Empire from internal and external threats. He provided a solid foundation to this Turkish Indian Empire, as a result of which this Turkish Indian Empire could survive for a long time. It never faced any serious threat to its existence in the time to come. Question 4. Write a short essay on the corps of 40 and its relations with sultans. So corps of 40, Turkani, Shirgani, and relations with different sultans, you can analyze one by one. Question 5. Analyze the steps taken by Razia to strengthen her position as an independent ruler despite various obstacles. So all the achievements of Razia, diplomacy, married heterogeneous nobility, organizing military conquest, participating in court affairs directly, all those things you need to write. These were steps taken by Rajia to consolidate her power, to remain on throne, and to exercise her authority effectively. Discuss the achievements of Sultana Rajia in the fields of war and peace. So again, the language is different. Question is same. Write about Rajia's contributions or achievements. All these questions you must attempt in 300 words for 20 mark format. As always, upload your answers on portal in your account. I'll check all the dimensions related to Sultan Balban. Thereafter, in the second part, some issues related to Khilji dynasty will be covered today. Let's start with Balban was Sultan of Delhi. Indicate that rise of Khiljis was revolutionary in the history of Turco-Afghan rule in India, and that is why the term Khilji revolution was coined by historian Muhammad Habib. Now let us have a look at the questions of today's class. Question number 1. What were the problems Balban faced? We have discussed all the problems, 7 problems that Balban faced at the time of sitting on throne. How far did he succeed in solving them? All the 7 problems were settled by him through his theory of kingship. So link the elements of theory of kingship with those problems and show how Balban succeeded in solving all those problems. Was he a trendsetter in his theory of kingship? This issue was also discussed as a part of long-term consequence of Balban's theory. So he established a new trend that was followed by Alauddin Khilji and many other rulers in future. Even Akbar, Mughal Emperor Akbar, adopted some elements from Balban's theory of kingship. Balban's title was Zilullah, Zillullullah, and similar title Zil-e-Ilahi was adopted by Akbar, meaning was the same in both cases, shadow of God on earth. So concept of divine origin of monarchy that Balban emphasized, adopted, was followed by Akbar also in future. So he was a trendsetter. Question number 2, critically examine the view that Balban was the consolidator of Delhi Sultanate. In this unit, write about the problems that Sultanate was facing when Balban sat on throne, then solution of problems by Balban, and outcome, consolidation of Delhi Sultanate. Question number 3, discuss the fundamental elements of Balban's theory of kingship. All the 13 elements or the features or the components of Balban's theory of kingship you need to write in this question as your answer. Try to be very, very precise and brief so that you can kind of follow the limits of your answer. Number 4, highlight the significance of Balban's theory of kingship in the history of Turco-Afghan rule in India. Short-term significance, consolidation. Long-term significance, established a new tradition that was followed by many other rulers in future. Question number 5, give an estimate of Sultan Ghiyasuddin Balban. So we have discussed the issue of estimate, all the dimensions, what we have covered here, you should write in your answer. Question number 6, write a short essay on Khilji revolution. So all the 7 components of revolution you should write here. Define the Khilji revolution, then write what are the corroborative arguments. Why is the rise of Khiljis at the helm of affairs of Delhi considered a revolution? So start with the introduction that the emergence of Khilji dynasty at the helm of affairs of Delhi was characterized by a number of significant and fundamental changes. Due to these changes, historian Muhammad Habib coined the term Khilji revolution and then write about the 7 supporting arguments. All these questions you should write in 300 words. In today's class, we will study the time period of Sultan Alauddin Khilji. In the previous class, the topic of Khilji revolution was covered, and after that, everything about Alauddin Khilji will be covered in today's class and in the next class. So, army under his command. So, this is about Alauddin's military forms. Now, let us see questions of today's class. Bring out the essential features of administration of Alauddin Khilji. So, what do you have to write the features of administration of Alauddin Khilji? Recall the features of administration of Turco-Afghan rule or the nature and character of the polity of Delhi Sultanate that we discussed in one of the previous classes. It was monarchical, same here. It was despotic, modify that, despotism of very high order. Third, it was centralized, same here. Fourth, it was a military state, it was a police state, it was Islamic state. All those elements, only thing that those 5 elements of his administration of Alauddin Khilji. Recall the features of administration of Turco-Afghan rule or the nature and character of the polity of Delhi Sultanate that we discussed in one of the previous classes. It was monarchical, same here. It was despotic, modify that, despotism of very high order. Third, it was centralized, same here. Fourth, it was a military state, it was a police state, it was Islamic state. All those elements, only thing that those 5 elements of his theory of kingship you need to keep in your mind. What are the 5 elements? monarchical despotism of very high order. Second, principle of strength. Third, separation of religion from politics. Fourth, innovations and reforms. And fifth, imperialism. So these five you have to insert in that list of continuity part, not change part, continuity that we discussed in the nature and character of Delhi Sultanate, and modify that accordingly. That will give you the features of administration of Alauddin Khilji. So mix both these parts. Second, examine the significance of Alauddin Khilji's administrative reforms. So what was significance? With the help of these reforms, he could eliminate the possibility of revolts and rebellions, and he could rule successfully for 20 years. Was he really successful in implementing these measures? So except the issue related to wine, he was successful in implementing 3 other measures. The wine issue had to be modified because of the problem of distilling wine by people in their own houses. Number 3, Alauddin was a typical despot. So all the dimensions of despotism that we have discussed in detail, you should write here. Write a short essay on Khilji imperialism. So this is about imperialism issue. So imperialism also we have discussed in detail, that you need to write here. Discuss the fundamental elements of Alauddin's theory of kingship, all the 5 elements one by one. Present a critical and comparative account of Balban's theory of kingship and Alauddin's theory of kingship. So you can compare and contrast the both. Some of these questions will fit in 150 words format. So these are 150 words format questions for 10 markers. Others you can write in 225 as well as in 300 words. So depending on your choice, follow all the 3 formats of your answers. As always, write your answers in of easy entry. So this great writer was connected with the people. He lived with the people and he wrote about them in detail. His books are one of the most important sources to learn the history of medieval age. That's why Amir Khusro is hailed as a great writer, poet, as well as a great magician. Now let us see the questions in today's class. Critically examine the price control measures of Alauddin Khilji. What was the main objective behind them and how far was he able to put them into effect? So, objective, the views of medieval writers, the views of modern historians, and then conclusion. Then, was he able to put them into effect? He was fully successful in implementing them. Write about implementation in brief. Second question, economic measures of Alauddin Khilji were aimed at greater political control. Economic measures means revenue reforms as well as market regulations. Everything what he was doing to strengthen his despotic authority. So write about the aims and objectives of revenue reforms and market regulations. Number 3, significance of Alauddin's economic regulations for his imperialism. Or explain, the prefix is missing. Explain the significance of Alauddin's economic regulations for his imperialism. Means how these economic regulations, revenue reforms, market regulations helped him in maintaining a large army, in expansion, in countering the threat of Mongols. So basically, all the objectives you need to write in this question also. Number 4, assess the impact of market reforms of Alauddin Khilji on contemporary economy and society. So, leave estate, everything else you need to write here. Impact on people of Delhi, impact on nobles, impact on craftsmen, impact on merchants, impact on peasants, impact on economy. Those dimensions you need to write here. Number 5, analyze the ordinances mentioned by Burni, which Alauddin Khilji promulgated for his market control. All the 7 ordinances, one by one, you need to analyze. Now let's have a look at the next question, question number 6. Discuss the implications of Khilji imperialism with special reference to administration and economic regulations on the state and the people. So in this question, you need to write the impact of Alauddin's administrative reforms, Alauddin's revenue reforms, Alauddin's market regulations on the state as well as people of Delhi Sultanate. So all the consequences you need to combine sector by sector or the branch by branch. Question number 7. What, in your opinion, was the significance of extensive military expeditions undertaken by Alauddin Khilji? So in the first part, you need to write about the significance of Alauddin's military expeditions. All these we have discussed in detail. In the second part, you need to see, do you think that his reign is considered significant in terms of these expeditions alone? It means other dimensions of significance also you need to write in part number 2. All these questions you should attempt in 300 words for 20 mark format. Keep reading the study material that you have received. Today's class is about the reign of Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He was one of the greatest rulers in the history of Turco-Afghan rule in India. Projects implemented while answer questions based on these projects. Now let us see the questions on today's class. Discuss the capital transfer project undertaken by Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq. What were the consequences of the failure of this project? So write about both parts. It's very simple, straightforward question. Second, critically examine the causes of the failure of major projects. So one by one you need to look at the failures. Role of Sultan you need to see. Sultan was idealistic. Touch of pragmatism was missing. He was thinking on a very grand scale, but when implementation came, he could not formulate the implementation policy very, very effectively. Sultan was a leader. Of course, leader had to accept the blame. Officers were corrupt. Officers were inefficient. They could not plan the projects properly. And some projects failed because of natural calamities. Plague, an epidemic in Deccan, and the drought in the region when taxation increase was carried out. All those factors you need to see here one by one. Discuss the token currency system introduced by Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Why did this project fail? So you know the cause of failure, because the design of token coin was too easy to be copied by anybody. Number 4, why did Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq establish model agricultural farm? You know the reasons. Discuss the factors responsible for the failure. All the 3 factors you need to write one by one. Do you agree that the schemes of Muhammad bin Tughlaq were correctly conceived? So schemes were good, badly executed. Implementation was faulty and disastrously abandoned. These schemes were abandoned in midway without taking proper corrective measures. So you have to start that Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq was a very powerful ruler. He was extremely ambitious. These projects were the result of his innovative mindset. The element of idealism was too high in the personality of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He was lacking touch with pragmatism or with reality. That is why he could conceive grand projects. But when implementation was to be carried out, he could not really pay proper attention to the implementation of his projects. This problem of Sultan's personality was magnified by the inefficiency of bureaucracy, by the corruption that was widespread in his bureaucracy. That is why projects could not be implemented properly, they were badly executed. When Sultan started seeing the negative outcome or the failed outcome, these projects were abandoned, they were not revived, they were not re-attempted, because Sultan lost interest in them. He moved on to the next project. So all these reasons you need to write here in detail. All these questions you should attempt in 300 words for 20 mark format. Upload in your account on portal as always. Go through the booklet. All these projects are given in detail in your booklet, so you should read once. Of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, his new orientation of his state system, his estimation, and various other issues. Let us start the class with the introduction. In the class of today, we'll be studying the changes in political system in today's class. Highlights the new orientation of his state policies and administrative principles under Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So all the new policies, you can write here all the different dimensions that we have discussed in detail. Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq was an agrarian innovator, so write his works for agricultural development. Discuss the characteristic features of Muhammad bin Tughlaq's bureaucracy. So MBT, short from Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So write all the features of bureaucracy, positives as well as the negatives. Do you agree with the view that Muhammad bin Tughlaq was a transcendent failure? Transcendent means complete failure. He was not complete failure because he was successful in many ways. So write his success, write his failures. Why did he fail to achieve the ideas that he had set for himself? So you need to write about the causes of his failure here. The last part that we have discussed, 3 different sets of causes. Muhammad bin Tughlaq's contradictory qualities were beyond the grasp of knowledge and common sense. Means he was portrayed as a mixture of opposites, which in reality he was not. Because a common man cannot understand that Sultan has to be ruthless to criminals and anti-social elements. Sultan has to be liberal, progressive towards the people of man of religion and learning. Sultan has to be liberal towards poor and hungry. So these are not contradictory qualities, these are basically essential qualities of ruler. That's why it is mentioned here beyond the knowledge and common sense. Evaluate the significance of his administrative measures and policies in the light of this statement. So you need to write about the significance of his changes or reforms. So he imparted a new orientation to his state system. If you have to have critical evaluation, then write about the impact of the failure of his projects. That we were discussing in the last part, that he sat on the throne at a time when Sultanate was strong and stable, and when he died there was crisis everywhere. That is the critical side or the negative side or the limitation side of his works. Next, discuss evidence on slavery provided by Ibn Battuta with a special reference to female slaves. Socio-slavery, as we have discussed in the last part of Ibn Battuta, you need to write. Start with the introduction. Who was Ibn Battuta? When did he come? What was his position? And when did he write his book? Then write about the reference of slaves from different perspectives that he provided in his book, Kitabul Rehla. So depending on the length of the question, you can use different formats. Some questions like features of bureaucracy, last one are fit for 150 words, 10 mark format. These questions are big. Number 4, 5, you need to write in 300 words. Others you can follow even 200 words approach. So depending on the content, depending on the demands a question, you have to follow different kind of formats. Write these answers, upload on portal in your account. As always, I'll check your answers, I'll send you the internal and external policies of Firoz Shah Tughlaq, his welfare measures, his public works, religious policy, judicial reforms, and other important initiatives will be studied in today's class. In the next class, we'll take up different issues related to Firoz Shah Tughlaq, such as Firoz Shah Tughlaq being an ideal Muslim king and various other interpretations associated with his reign, as well as external challenges. Discuss the challenges faced by Sultanate at the time of coronation of Sultan Firoz Shah Tughlaq. So discuss or write all the internal as well as external challenges. Critically examine the response of Firoz Shah Tughlaq to external and internal challenges. So now write about responses on external front as well as on the internal front. Discuss the revenue reforms. So all the revenue reforms one by one you are supposed to write here. You start with the reasons and add all the points of reforms. Number 4, throw light on the welfare measures of Sultan Firoz Shah Tughlaq. All the dimensions of welfare measures one by one you can write. These are straight questions. Sultan Firoz Shah Tughlaq was a benevolent despot. He was a despot like every other ruler of Sultanate, but since he initiated welfare measures for the benefit of Muslims, so he was a liberal despot, he was a limited despot, or he was a benevolent despot. So write about his welfare measures and then conclude that he was a benevolent despot. Form an estimate of personality of Firoz Shah Tughlaq with a special reference to his religious policy and public work. So he was a great builder, and he was religiously orthodox. So both you can write one by one. Religious policy, what was the character, what were the factors, and public works, what kind of public works did he undertake in construction of new buildings and repairing of old monuments of previous rulers. Both were carried out. It means he was liberal in terms of patronage of public works, he was orthodox in his religious outlook. All these questions you should write in 300 words for 20 mark format. Upload in this class will be on the nature and character of his political system or the theory of kingship of Firoz Shah Tughlaq, his comparison with Muhammad bin Tughlaq, his responsibility in the decline of Tughlaq dynasty, Firoz Shah Tughlaq being an ideal Muslim king. So all these different kind of dimensions about the reign of Sultan Firoz Shah Tughlaq will be studied today. Let us start with the introduction to today's class. Sources of information. Why was Firoz Tughlaq regarded as an ideal Muslim king of medieval times? Write about parameters of ideal Muslim king, and then write about his examples or the attributes or elements of ideal Muslim king in the works of Firoz Shah Tughlaq. No need to write about limitations here. Question number 2, Firoz Tughlaq is often regarded as an ideal Muslim king of medieval times, but a closer examination of his policies and actions brings to light a different reality. So write about ideal Muslim king attributes in his personality, in his works, and then second part write about limitations. It means everything what we have learned today about the issue of ideal Muslim king, all the 3 parts. Who said him? Why did Afif say him that he was ideal Muslim king, attributes and everything you need to write. Discuss essential elements of theory of kingship of Firoz Shah Tughlaq. So all the 8 elements you need to analyze one by one. Firoz Tughlaq has been overshadowed by Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Means historians have invested most of their time and energy in either criticizing Muhammad bin Tughlaq or in praising him as a wonder of creation, as a born genius, as a man far ahead of his times, etc. In the light of this statement, evaluate the significance of policies and actions. So write about his achievements basically. Right, why do we say him? He was a successful ruler. Present a critical and comparative account of reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq and Firoz Shah Tughlaq. So we have analyzed things. You need to write. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was a failure. Why was he a failure? Firoz Shah Tughlaq was a success. Why was he success? Okay. The last issue, examine critically the responsibility of Firoz Shah Tughlaq for the fall of his dynasty. You start with the responsibility of Firoz Shah Tughlaq, and then you can come back to the role of other factors. So Firoz Shah Tughlaq played an important role, but he was not the only person, only factor responsible for the decline of Tughlaq dynasty. Attempt all these questions in 200 words and 300 words format as per the size of the content you have, because questions could be in 150 words. Dear students, in today's class we will study the Mongol policy of Sultans of Delhi and thereafter decline of Delhi Sultanate. These 2 topics will cover one by one. First Mongol policy and then go up to proves to be the straw that broke camel's back. Sultanate came to an end. Mughal Empire came into existence under the leadership of Babur. So these were the factors for the decline. Now let us see the questions. Critically examine the Mongol policy of different sultans of Delhi. So start from Iltutmish and go up to Nashiruddin Mahmud Tughlaq, and then write about the main points of the responses to counter the challenge of Mongols. How did Mongols' invasions affect Delhi Sultanate and the northwestern frontier policy? So write about the policy, they built forts and repaired all those things. And what was the impact? Impact was negative as well as positive. Critically examine the factors responsible for the decline of Delhi Sultanate. So all these factors one by one you need to write. Number 4, the policy of creating heterogeneous nobility by Muhammad Ulugh started the process of disintegration of Delhi Sultanate. So start with the point of heterogeneous nobility. It weakened Sultanate internally, and then write about other factors. This was an important factor, but this was not the only factor. So that's what you need to write here. How was the Afghan nobility responsible for the decline of Afghan empires? So Afghan nobility was responsible because, again, role of nobility, they conspired with Babur. They were extremely ambitious, they were unruly. So role of nobility, give examples from Afghans, and then after that write other factor. This was one factor in the decline of Delhi Sultanate. This was not the only factor. This talks about empires. Similar was the problem faced by successors of Sir Shah. That we'll see in the topic of Sir Shah Suri. Sir Shah's empire was also Afghan empire. He was also Afghan. So Sir Shah's successors were defeated by Humayun when Humayun re-established Mughal empire or Mughal rule in India in 1555-56. The factors responsible for the decline of Sultanate were inherent in the limitations of its political system itself. Examine the truth of this statement critically. So write about the first part, your role of the inherent limitations of Delhi Sultanate. Once you have to see critically to what extent, you have to write this was the most important factor. There were other factors also, role of nobility and role of foreign invasions. So 60% inherent limitations of political system and 40% the role of other factors. All these answers you should write in 300 words. As always, upload your answers. We'll study Bhakti and Sufi movement. This is the class number 1 on this topic of Bhakti and Sufi movement. We will have another class on the same topic to cover the remaining issues which are going to be left out today. The emergence of Marathas as a dominant political force under the leadership of Shivaji. Now let us see the questions on today's class. Discuss briefly the causes that contributed to the emergence of religious movements of 15th and 16th century. So all the causes we have discussed, all those 7 causes, you need to write one by one. Depending on the length of the answer that you have at your disposal, you should cut the explanation or you should write in short form. What was Sufism? How did it spread in India? So write about the Sufism, spread, give the names of different Sufi sects. Discuss and evaluate critically various trends in the historiography of Bhakti. So different opinions of scholars about Bhakti you need to write. Number 4, discuss the growth of Nirguna school of Bhakti movement, emphasizing the contribution of Kabir and Nanak. So Nirguna, explain it and then write about Kabir and Nanak's teachings. Number 5, assess the contribution of Acharyas in the development of ideological basis of Bhakti. Go back to the tradition of Alvar saints. Come to Nath Muni, Yavanacharya, Ramanacharya, and then bringing Bhakti, the tradition carried further by Ramanand. Ramanand was associated with the tradition of Ramanacharya, and then his disciples, Kabir, Ravidas, and others propagated idea of Bhakti among the masses. Number 6, Bhakti movement received remarkable reorientation with the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So remarkable reorientation, emphasizing on equality, not to criticize others, respecting everyone, use of kirtan and other things. Those things you need to write here about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu particularly. And then one part of the answer has to be about the features of Bhakti movement. What was Bhakti actually? Number 7, discuss the most significant contributions of Kabir and Guru Nanak Dev. So write about Kabir and Guru Nanak Dev particularly. What was their ideas? To which branch of Bhakti movement were they belonging to? And what kind of impact they have on the human life of later times? So write all these answers in 150 words particularly. These are short kind of answers. And after writing 150 words, then try to have your answers in a bigger format of 225. Dear students, today is the second class on the topic of Bhakti and Sufi movements. In this class, we will study the nature and character of these movements. Inform the social outlook, social thinking fundamentally. So these were the limitations of Bhakti and Sufi involving adherents of both religions. You need to write about the teachings, the values, or basically the similar enough. And so these were the limitations of Bhakti and Sufi movements. Now let us see the questions of today's class. The tenets of Hindu and Muslim mystics were similar enough, and the ground was ripe for the syncretic movements involving adherents of both religions. You need to write about the teachings, the values, or basically the characteristic features of Bhakti and Sufi movements. Then you can understand how their tenets, the teachings were similar enough. And then that similarity contributed to cultural assimilation. Syncretic means assimilatory movements. Number 2, analyze the approach of religious movements of 15th and 16th centuries to the realities of contemporary life. Again, you have to write about their features. What kind of? They were liberal, they were progressive, they were egalitarian, they were non-violent. So that was the approach of Bhakti and Sufi movements. They were the religious movements of 15th and 16th centuries to the contemporary life. Number 3, evaluate the impact of Sufi and Bhakti movements on the vernacular languages, life and thought of common people. So write about the impact of Bhakti and Sufi movements and try to combine similar points together. Because the question is asking both together, so combine the similar points together. Number 4, Sufis and the medieval mystic saints. Mystic saints means Bhakti saints. Failed to modify either the religious ideas and the practices or the outward structure of Hindu-Muslim societies to any appreciable extent. First thing you need to write here that the character was reformative, not revolutionary. So pick up the points from the character. They were liberal, they were progressive, they were egalitarian, they were inclusive, but they were reformative, not revolutionary. Then write about the impact. Impact was quite significant. Of course, they could not eliminate these evils permanently, but impact was quite significant. Sufis and Bhakti thoughts ennobled, making something better. Psyche amidst the vagaries of time. So how ethical moral foundations were strengthened, how awareness was generated among the masses. Those things you need to write. So question is demanding the impact or the contribution of Bhakti and Sufi movements. Write all these answers in the tip of his own soul and left behind a lasting legacy. That was Sesha Suri. Now let us see the questions of today's class. The rise of Sesha from the position of a petty leader of troops, being the ruler of one of the biggest empires, is a saga of courage and determination. So this is about the personal life, beginning from very humble background, extremely tough personal circumstances, and then he became the ruler of Hindustan. So write about his early life, his success against Mughals, and his act of sitting on the throne of Hindustan. Discuss the main features of political administrative system of Sesha Suri. So all the 11 dimensions of nature and character you need to write here. Number 3, examine the major contributions of Sur rulers. So Sur rulers or Sesha Suri meaning is same because he did whatever Surs did in total. So his reforms, his unique political system, that you need to write here. Number 4, Sesha combined in himself the qualities of both lion and fox. We have discussed the issue in detail. You need to write the same thing. Number 5, discuss the reforms undertaken by Sesha Suri in different spheres of political administrative life. So all the reforms one by one you need to explain. Number 6, Sesha was a forerunner of Akbar. Issue we have discussed in detail. Write all the dimensions which prove that Sesha's policies, actions and programs were carried further by Akbar. Bring out the significance of the reign of Sesha Suri in the history of India. So all these dimensions you need to explain one by one to highlight the significance of Sesha's reign. All these questions you need to attempt in 150 words for the shorter format. For example, forerunner of Akbar, or combining the quality of lion and fox. You can use 225 words format for the moderate size questions. You can use 300 word format for the bigger questions because questions could be in 10 marker, 15 marker as well as 20 markers. We will study the political administrative system of Mughal Empire. Every issue related to Mughal political system, such as the features of Mughal administration, the Turco-Mongol elements in Mughal political system, and Akbar's theory of kingship will be studied in today's class. Let us start the class with introduction. Akbar, and because of this policy, Akbar could rule successfully for about 50 years. Now let us see questions of today's class. Discuss the characteristic features of political administrative system of Mughal Empire. All the features one by one we should discuss here. Analyze the nature and character of Mughal political system. Meaning is the same. All the 14 points one by one we need to put. Present a critical and comparative account or analysis of Mughal administrative system and the political administrative system of Delhi Sultanate. So now you have the features of Mughal polity with you. You have the features of political system of Delhi Sultanate. Put both of these side by side and then try to compare what was similar and what was different. Monarchy was same. Dynasty successor was not. Centralization same. Despotism same. So all those elements you need to see. Secular under Mughals, religious or Islamic character under Sultans of Delhi. So all the points one by one you need to keep comparing. Number 4, comment on the Turco-Mongol theory of sovereignty. To what extent it was adopted by Babur and Humayun. So Turco-Mongol theory of sovereignty, we have discussed all the elements. All those elements were followed by Akbar and Humayun. Babur and Humayun. Under Akbar also similar concept continued because the Mughals of India were Mongols and Turks together. Bring out the essential elements of Akbar's theory of kingship. So all the 11 points you need to write here. What was Akbar's notion of Sulhul? How did it help Mughal Empire? So Sulhul and its impact or significance, write in detail. This is about the questions of today's class. Mughal bureaucracy. The Mansabdars were appointed in civil as well as in military capacities. The Mansabdari system defined the political system of Mughals in India. Let us start the class with introduction. The term mutations of Mansabdari system. So this was the topic of Mansabdari system. Let us see questions on today's class. Bring out the salient features of Mansabdari system with special reference to the reign of Akbar. So all the features what we have discussed were introduced by Akbar. No need to go to Jahangir and Shah Jahan's reign. Write all the features. Examine the merits and demerits. Merits means features, demerits means limitations of Mansabdari system introduced by Akbar. So write all the 17 merits and then write the limitations or demerits also. Throw light on the evolution of Mansabdari system under successors of Akbar. So changes introduced by Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and 1 point of Aurangzeb. Also proved that powers were given to the Jagirdars. Number 4, critically analyze whether the success of Mughals is to be credited to their robust Jagirdari system. Of course, this system played a very, very important role in strengthening Mughal Empire in the expansion and consolidation of Mughal Empire. So write about the contribution part. Critically examine the contribution of Mansabdari system in consolidating Mughal Empire. All the points, all the dimensions of contribution, all 11 dimensions. Cultural contribution or cultural consolidation or administrative consolidation or consolidation. All these things you need to put in your answer. Number 6, discuss the factors responsible for the failure of Mansabdari system in 18th century. All these limitations you need to write. We'll start the topic from the reign of Babur and then continue till the reign of Aurangzeb, ruler by ruler. Let us start with introduction to today's class. Rajput policy played an important role in the success of Mughal Empire. It affected Mughal Empire. Yes. So this is how you have to see when you have to carry out critical examination of these statements. Let us see the questions. Discuss the factors that shaped Rajput policy of Akbar. How did it affect Mughal Empire? So write all the factors and write the impact on Mughal Empire. Analyze the characteristic features of Akbar's Rajput policy. How did it evolve over the period of time? So features and features you need to put here. Do you think that Akbar's Rajput policy was a conscious attempt to incorporate Indian ruling elite with Mughal imperial state system? Definitely, it was a conscious move. So write the factors that shaped Akbar's Rajput policy and focus more on the factors which were indicating the realization of significance of Rajputs. Akbar built Mughal Empire by enlisting support of Rajputs. Aurangzeb destroyed it by eliminating them. Comment of Jitna Sarkar. So you have to focus on the positive impact of Akbar's Rajput policy, negative impact of Aurangzeb's Rajput policy, and then you have to conclude that impact was negative, but it was not that big enough that it destroyed Mughal Empire. Describe the Rajput policy of Mughal emperors. So you have to start from Babur to Aurangzeb. Do you think, or do you agree with the view that a reversal of Akbar's Rajput policy by Aurangzeb was responsible for the disintegration of Mughal Empire? Same like question number 4. So attempt all these questions. Write answers in full 300 words. Dear students, in today's class, we will study the religious policy of Mughal Empire. Act of religious orthodoxy of Aurangzeb is religious orthodox policy. Now let us see the questions of today's class. In medieval Indian history, Akbar is unique for his religious ideas and policy. So write about Akbar's religious outlook, the feature and the character. Trace the evolution of religious policy of Akbar. So all the 3 phases, one by one, along with the factors. Analyze the characteristic features of Akbar's religious policy. Simple, direct features, you need to write all features one by one. Number 4, discuss the impact of Akbar's religious policy on the strength and stability. So what was the significance, what was the impact, that part you need to write here. Throw light on the elements of change and continuity in Mughal religious policy under Jahangir and Shah Jahan. So write about some changes towards orthodoxy, and continuity was liberal and progressive outlook as was under Akbar. In what ways were Aurangzeb's Rajput policy was Aurangzeb's religious policy, not Rajput? In what ways was Aurangzeb's religious policy different from his predecessors? What were the consequences of changes made by him? So how did he change religious policy? It became orthodox. And what was the impact? What was the consequence? Write about impact. Analyze the religious policy of Mughal emperors from Akbar to Aurangzeb. Now you have to write about every ruler in brief. So this is about today's class. Keep revising things, what you are learning day by day. Keep reading and studying. Dear students, in today's class, we will study the Mughal Deccan policy and the Mughal foreign policy. In first part of class, we will study Deccan issue. On the bulk issue, it was a negative, it was a failure. Otherwise, it was a success. It could fulfill the objectives associated with it. So these were the broad contours of Mughal foreign policy. Now let's see the questions of today's class. First question, discuss the factors that shaped Deccan policy of Akbar. How did it affect Mughal Empire? So write about the benefit or the impact in part 2, part 1 factors. Spanish also ruined Napoleon. Deccan also ruined Aurangzeb. So as far as Spanish ulcer is concerned, you are supposed to write only 1 or 2 sentences that a similar popular rebellion was encountered by Napoleon in Spain, and that rebellion had played an important role in the downfall of Napoleon. So you have to focus on Deccan ulcer. What is ulcer and why did Deccan ulcer, and then what was impact. Expansion of Mughal Empire in Deccan brought about its decline. So write about the impact of Deccan ulcer here. In what ways was Aurangzeb's Deccan policy different from its predecessors? So write about continuity and change. What were the consequences? Deccan ulcer was the outcome. Discuss the factors that shaped foreign policy of Mughal emperors. So all the 5 factors you can write one by one. Identify the broad contours of Mughal foreign policy and impact on Mughal Empire. So contours means what were the motivations, what were the approaches, and what was the outcome. All these 3 dimensions you need to write here. Attempt all these questions in 300-word format. Dear students, in today's class we will study the land revenue system in India during medieval age. This topic of land revenue is quite big, so we'll have 2 classes. This is class number 1 on this topic. Peasants resorted to protest. That was the last method, in fact, because this used to result at times in extreme. So all the categories of peasants which we... Now let's see the questions on today's class. Throw light on the different categories of peasants in India during medieval period. So all the categories of peasants which we have discussed, you need to write one by one, you need to explain one by one. We start from the Riaya, Bahi caste, then Moza Riaya, then Mustazi, then Reza Riaya, then Riaya Khud caste, and Riaya Mukarrari or Mukarrari Riaya. All those categories you need to write here in detail. Number 2, discuss the nature and mechanism of land revenue assessment and collection in India at categories. You need to write here in detail. Number 2, discuss the nature and mechanism of land revenue assessment and collection in India at the time of establishment of Turkish rule. Patai or crop sharing was the method of assessment. Collection was carried out with the help of village admin. Each peasant was a revenue unit. Each village was a collection unit for the state. Number 3, analyze the features of land revenue system in India during the period of Delhi Sultanate. So Delhi Sultanate, initially you have to see that Qutbuddin Aibak to Jalaluddin Khilji, old system continued. Then Alauddin Khilji introduced a new system, so all those things you need to write. Trace the evolution of land revenue system in India during the period of Sultans of Delhi or Delhi Sultanate. So now focus has to be on evolution. It's like the old itself, but you have to link Sultan to Sultan clearly. What was before Alauddin, what was under Alauddin, what was the change under Muhammad bin Tughlaq, then what kind of change took place under Firuz Shah Tughlaq. So you have to link phase by phase. Assess the condition of peasantry during the 13th to 16th centuries. So conditions we have discussed here, you need to write all those points. State the structure of medieval village society in northern India. What were the passive forms of resistance? Passive forms of resistance? Migrating, forest, reducing cultivation. This is active form of resistance. So all these things you can write here. All these questions are for 150-word format. So try to follow the word limit clearly. In case you have more words, then try to shorten the examples. Explanation can be cut down. Dear students, in today's class, we will study the land revenue system of Mughal period. In the previous class, you studied the land revenue system of Delhi Sultanate. This is the class number 2 on the same topic of land revenue system. Today's class will be started with the land. So this is land revenue introduced by Shah Zamindars and Mughal Empire. Now let us have a look at the questions of today's class. Analyze the essential features of the system of land revenue introduced by Shah Suri. All the 9 features one by one you need to analyze. Examine critically. Once you have to examine critically, then you have to add after features limitations. Throw light on the merits and demerits of having these systems. Merits means features and demerits means limitations. Discuss the impact of land revenue reforms of Akbar on the strength and stability of empire. So, positive side, you have to write here. How revenue collection was facilitated. How state got to know about the possible revenue income in advance. How state encouraged the peasants to bring more and more land under cultivation so that economic progress will get a boost of peasants as well as state benefited immensely. So, it contributed positively to the strength and stability of Mughal Empire. We because state as well as peasants both were benefited by it. So pick up the points from the features. Discuss the working of Zamindari system and the Mughal rulers. Also describe the role played by Zamindars in agrarian economy. So what was the role? Collecting the revenue, maintaining control over the people. That was the role in agrarian economy. They were the head or the boss of the village. Review briefly the methods of land revenue assessment adopted by Mughals. So here, Aine Sala. Before that, Jabdeha Sala, in which revenue was estimated on the basis of annual measurement. Jamai Rakni was initially where revenue was assessed in cash. A bulk amount, lump sum amount was to be paid by leaders. Then Batai, Kanku, Nask, and Muktai, all those systems also need to write here. So try to use different formats in terms of the length of the answer depending on the content. You can have 150 words, you can have 220 words, you can have 300 words format. Write as many answers as possible, upload on portal. As always, I'll check your answers and I'll send you back. From the development under Sultans of Delhi and then move to the Mughal period. In this class, we'll study the forms and features of architecture during Turkey's Mughal period, what kind of elements were brought to India by the Turkish invaders, and what kind of new features emerged in India during Mughal period. How did these Islamic elements brought by Turks and Mughals and the Indian elements from Rajputs, Deccan, Gujarat, etc. got assimilated over a period of time? All these to the neighbor Quwwatul Islam Mosque, and right, how did it evolve on tones? So all the class. First question. Discuss the essential elements of Indo-Islamic architecture. How did it evolve under different sultans of Delhi? So all the features of Indo-Islamic architecture, use of arches, use of domes, ornamentation techniques, Kufi, arabesque, colored stones, assimilation of Indian elements, all these things you need to write. And then start from the reign of Qutbuddin Aibak, Quwwatul Islam Mosque, and then write how did it evolve under Khiljis, under Tughlaqs, and thereafter under Lodhis. So all these elements you need to put here in your answer. Try to put things in a very short form, concise form, otherwise answer will be very, very big. Second, discuss the technological and stylistic developments in the architecture of Sultanate period. So technological is one dimension. Write about all the technological aspects: true arch from gobbled arch, double dome from single dome, 5-corner or pentagonal or octagonal layout plan from the normal quadrangular layout plan. Stylistic developments, what kind of monuments were built, palaces, forts, ponds, etc. All those things you need to write here. So focus on technology, one part. Second is stylists or the manifestations, and then keep moving from period 1 to period 2 throughout Sultanate age. Question number 3, throw light on the progress of Indo-Islamic architecture during Khilji and Tughlaq period. So in this question you need to write only about Khilji. Khilji, we have discussed certain technological advancements took place, like the laying out of bricks in header and stretcher format. For the first time, monuments were built in fresh material during Khilji period. Recall example of Jamaat Khana Mosque will be allowed in Khilji in Delhi. Tughlaq period, Firoz Shah Tughlaq, Muhammadan Tughlaq, all those, and before them, founder of Tughlaq dynasty, Ghayasul Tughlaq, he built Tughlaqabad fort, and his tomb was the first pentagonal monument. All those elements you need to write here. Question number 4, describe the new architectural features added by successive sultans in the construction of tombs. So, they start from Balban's time. For the first time, change was under Balban. True arch was used. Then, under Khilji's, fresh material was used, laying out of bricks, header stretcher. Under Tughlaq's, cheap material, pentagonal designs, sloping walls, use of white marble, construction of tomb on a raised platform, and then octagonal. Then you have to shift to the double dome under Lodhis. Number 5, identify the traces of Persian and Rajput traditions in the field of architecture during Mughal period. So Persian elements, minarets, dome, arches, methods of ornamentation. Rajput elements, jali, chajja, chhatri, jharoka, all those things you need to write with examples. Number 6, the Mughals built like titans and embellished like jewelers. So size or the level of layout, level of planning was massive. So monuments of Mughals were very, very big in size. That's the meaning of titans. Embellished like jewelers, ornamentation level was highest. So focus on refinement of ornamentation and large scale of the planning. Number 7, zenith of Mughal architecture was witnessed under Shah Jahan. So write about his future features of architecture under Shah Jahan and then link how this was the climax. So Babur to Humayun to Akbar to Jahangir, and then under Shah Jahan it was the zenith. Attend all these questions. The shorter one you can follow 150 word format, and the bigger one you can follow 300 words. Dear students, in today's class we will study the development in the field of paintings during medieval age and the development in the field of music and dance. In the first part of today's class, we'll start with the development in the field of paintings. This process of development in the field of paintings will trace from early medieval age what we left behind in the class of ancient times. So in the ancient time class, paintings were phase number 1, and in today's class, the medieval paintings will be phase number 2. The paintings will start from early medieval age around 750 AD and will continue till the British period, or the modern paintings will also be covered in today's class itself. After finishing all the dimensions of paintings related to early medieval and modern times, we'll move to the development of music. Discuss the level of progress witnessed in classical music, dance or folk dance. These are two variants of classical music in India. Now let us see the questions on today's class. Discuss the level of progress witnessed in the field of paintings during Mughal period. So all the forms, features you need to write of Mughal paintings. Bring out the essential features of Mughal paintings. So meaning is the same here. Directly features have been asked. In the first one, the level of progress, you have to focus on refinement, assimilation, and all other examples of all other dimensions which indicate a very high level of progress in the field of paintings during Mughal period. Question number 3, bring out the essential features of Rajasthani and Pahari paintings. So focus on these paintings which emerged in the 18th century. What do you understand by the term miniature painting? Discuss the essential features of miniature paintings. So miniature paintings characterized by 3 main features. Representation of very fine details. If you see a miniature painting under magnifying glass, you will find more details comes out. The details won't fade away. You will have more details visible to you if you look at this painting under magnifying glass. Number 2, the normal size of panel 25 square inches, and objects are depicted at the most 1/6 of their original size. Then you can start with the progress early medieval age, then Mughal period. Mughal paintings reflect contemporary socio-political conditions. So write about the theme of Mughal painting, how court scenes, hunting scenes, war scenes, palace scenes, as well as the scenes of national life were depicted. So focus on that part here. Narrative paintings constituted the crux of paintings under Jahangir and Akbar. Narrative paintings constituted crux of paintings under Babur and Humayun. Under Akbar, narrative paintings continued, but portrait paintings also started. Under Jahangir, progress was in the field of portrait paintings lastly. So start in that manner. Present a critical and comparative account of Carnatic music and Hindustani music. So both the branches we have discussed here in very detail. All the different dimensions of music you need to analyze, you need to discuss one by one. Attempt all these questions in 150-word format. Dear students, in today's class we will study various miscellaneous issues related to Mughal Empire, such as Akbar as the promoter of science and technology, Mughal Karkhanas, Portuguese colonial enterprise, Mughal coinage. So these issues are very, very important for your exam because these are often asked as, so to say, as 10-marker questions in UPSC main examination in your paper 1. In section B, that metal plating, you are supposed to write the period. Now let us see the questions of today's class. Give an estimate of Akbar as a promoter of technology. So in this question, you are supposed to write all the dimensions of progress in the field of technology during the reign of Akbar. So progress in the form of gear mechanism, metal plating, screw, the natural cooling techniques, detachable guns, all those things you need to write here one by one. Discuss different types of karkhanas in Mughal India. So all the 6 variants of karkhanas, 6 types of karkhanas you need to write. How was the production organized in karkhanas? So karkhana was under a department of government headed by Diwan-e-Buyutat in the reign of Akbar. Miri Saman was the head after Akbar's reign. Every karkhana was under the administrative control of a Daroga. Daroga was the person having special knowledge in a particular craft in which karkhana was dealing. Then there were senior craftsmen, ustad, junior craftsmen, shagird. All these things you need to write here. Examine the factors which were responsible for the opening and development of European trade in India during 16th and 17th centuries. So Constantinople was captured by Turks in 1453. Europeans had to look for direct sea route between Europe and India. Vasco da Gama reached India in 1498 and Portuguese came, and then they were followed by many others. What factors led to establishment of Portuguese control on Indian Ocean? Portuguese discovered direct sea route. Portuguese were having naval power with them. Portuguese were supported by Portuguese government strongly, and once they established the monopoly over sea route by shattering the monopoly of Arabs, so they established their dominance over Indian Ocean. How did it affect? Positive as well as negative, both sides need to write. Indo-European trade would be boosted, Indian export increased, huge amount of foreign wealth started moving into India. All these things you need to write here. Analyze the Mughal monetary system and examine their policy of minting coins. So monetary system, features, all these things you need to write. That will be the policy of minting coins, also centralized control, decentralized production, import dependence, uniform standard, all those things you need to put here. Discuss the main features of Mughal monetary system. So simply here you need to write all the features of Mughal monetary system. Discuss causes and consequences of the revolution of 16th, 17th centuries. So trade revolution, what were the factors responsible, what was the impact, all these things you need to write. All these questions are particularly for 150 word type of format. So attend all these questions as much as possible at least. Upload on portal. Dear students, in today's class we will study the decline of Mughal Empire and the debates about the character of 18th century. 18th century has been interpreted quite differently by different scholars. Some say it was a dark age, some others say it was the age of progress. There are many other So transition was taking place gradually. It was not sudden. It was not very much perceptible. It was very gradual. So 18th century was the age of transition. It was the age of transition from medieval to modern age. It was early modern age. Now let us see the questions of today's class. Critically examine the factors and forces responsible for decline of Mughal Empire. All the 5 theories, those are 5 main factors, and other factors you need to write one by one. So you have to be very precise, very succinct, otherwise answer will take more than 1,000 words. Discuss the role of growth of new political forces in the provinces and decline of Mughal Empire. So here focus has to be on emergence of succession states and emergence of new regional forces. Those 2 dimensions you need to write here in 150 words. Do you think that the agrarian crisis of 17th century led to disintegration of Mughal Empire? So you need to analyze the theory of agrarian crisis critically. Of course, it was a big factor, it was the biggest factor.
It was not the only factor.
And it was not the only factor. Critically examine the responsibility of Aurangzeb in the decline of Mughal Empire. So theory number 1, theory put forward by Jagana Sarkar, that Aurangzeb doomed the fate of Mughal Empire. The Rajput policy role, religious policy role, Deccan policy role, and critically examine. How would you like to characterize 18th century in Indian history? 18th century would be the age of transition. 18th century was the early modern age. That's what you need to write here. What are the distinguishing components of debate? All the 3 dimensions you need to analyze one by one. How far it is correct to say the 18th century was a dark age? So in this question you need to write only about the concept of dark age or the issue of dark age. 18th century being a dark age or was it the age of progress? So all these questions you should attempt. Length of answer will depend. This is the first 2 should be in full 300 words. These should be in 150 words. So depending on the content that you... Dear students, in today's class we will study Maratha movement. The rise and the decline of Marathas as a political power will be studied in this class. Some topics related to Marathas will be studied today. This is class number 1 of this topic. And the remaining topics related to Marathas will be studied. Was given to Maratha by export managed in tourism. That's one part. Shivaji's rise to power cannot be treated as an isolated phenomenon in Maratha history. It was at most a result of his personal daring and heroism. That's one part. As of peculiar geographical conditions, it means the role of geography. And the people with new hopes and aspirations means the role of Maharashtra Dharma. So Shivaji's rise to the rise of Marathas was not the result of any one single factor. It was the result of the combination of factors. The role of Shivaji, role of geography, and role of Maharashtra Dharma. All these 3 parts you need to write here. Trace the emergence of Maratha power under Shivaji. So same factors you need to write, but try to be brief now. You start that in the middle of witnessed their political resurgence when Shivaji captured the fort of Torana, and then 1674 he established independent Maratha kingdom. What factors? Then write factors. Was Shivaji nationalist leader? We have discussed it. Was Shivaji? Shivaji was not merely a military conqueror, he was also an enlightened ruler. So he created a kind of efficient, effective administrative machinery, fiscal financial system. Fiscal financial system you have studied in detail in today's class. Administration we will see in detail in the next class. Then you can pick up some point from there and you can understand this question better. Number 5, give social background of the rise of Maratha movement. Write about the social factors, social equality, and specifically role of Maharashtra Dharma, how social awakening was created by Maharashtra Dharma, how social unity was strengthened by Maharashtra Dharma, how a spirit of self-sacrifice was inculcated. So write about role of Maharashtra Dharma here. Discuss the role of Maharashtra Dharma in the rise of Maratha movement, so this is direct. Attend all these questions in 150 words, in 225 words, bigger one. The first one and the second one you need to write in 300 words format. So write as many answers as possible day by day. Keep reading this. This is the reality of English conquest of India. Now let us see the questions on today's class. Compared to English counterparts, the French East India Company enjoyed little discretionary power and had to always look towards Paris for all important decisions. This partly explains the failure. So this is one of the factors. We have discussed the difference in the nature of two companies. Write that, and there were other factors. Add those factors also. Duplex committed, or Duple basically pronounced. Duple committed a cardinal blunder in looking for the key of Indian Madras. Clive sought and found in Bengal. So, a strategic mistake committed by the French governor under Duple in focusing on Madras, not paying sufficient attention to Bengal. This was the main factor. Then see, there were other factors also. Add those factors also here. Comment on the French ambitions of building a territorial empire in India. Write about Second Carnatic War. How Duple supported the contenders in Hyderabad and Carnatic, and he was successful initially. But this failed. Second half of the answer, this failed. Why? Because of the factors. We have discussed 7 factors. Write those factors also. Number 4. Do you subscribe to the view that Anglo-French tussle in Carnatic demonstrated the internal decay of provincial chieftains? We have discussed the issue of internal decay. Multi-dimensional decay of character, decay of administration, decay of military, and decay of strategic vision. They could not understand that being together would have been a solution to the problem faced or created by the Europeans. They were fighting with each other, and they were trying to seek the support of Europeans against their Indian opponents. Number 5. Neither Alexander the Great nor Napoleon could have won the Empire of India by starting from Pondicherry as a base and contending with the power, having Bengal in command of sea. So, role of resources of Bengal, the role of naval supremacy. Those 2 factors you have to write primarily. And once those factors were there, other factors were just subordinate factors. So you need to focus on those 2 factors in this. Those 2 factors you have to write primarily. Power, having Bengal in command of sea. So role of resources of Bengal, the role of naval supremacy. Those 2 factors you have to write primarily. And once those factors were there, other factors were just subordinate factors. So you need to focus on those 2 factors in this question. The British conquered India in a fit of absent-mindedness. Examine the truth of this statement critically. Controversy about the nature of English conquest of India. Write everything. The rise and expansion of the British Empire in India was an accident rather than the result of any deliberate policy and design. The meaning is the same question, just language is different. All these questions you need to write for 20 markers in 300 words in modern India. You get questions of 20 markers and 10 markers. So try to focus on the longer questions, and then you shift focus to the shorter questions. Write all these answers. Try to write as much as possible. If you can write 1 good enough, write 2 good enough, write all the answers. That will be great. Upload on the portal in your account. The conquest of Bengal started the process of establishment of British rule in India. And when the English conquered Maratha land by defeating Marathas, the British Indian Empire emerged on the scene in a very big way. So both the issues will be studied in this class in detail. Let us start with introduction to Bengal. Bengal was a part of Mughal Empire. Because Marathas could not align with Mysore, signed political conflict, result of their failure against us. These factors were responsible for the defeat of Marathas in Second War and in Third War also. Now let us see the questions on today's class. Battle of Plassey was not a great battle, it was a great betrayal. So write about the nature of Battle of Plassey, how casualties are few, how conspiracies decided the outcome. After 1757, Bengal emerged as a plundered state and a sponsored state. So impact of the Battle of Plassey that we have discussed in it right here. The Battle of Plassey that decided the fate of Bengal was won by Clive through intrigues. So write the role of conspiracy in it. On 23rd June 1757, Middle Age of India came to an end, modern age began. We have discussed the issue in detail, write all the issues. There was never a battle in which consequences were so vast, so immediate and so permanent. The comment was made by G.B. Malleson about Battle of Plassey. So analyze the significance of Battle of Plassey from different perspectives. Was it really that significant? We say it was not that significant. It was just one important step in the direction of emergence of British Indian Empire. Had company lost any significant battle in future, Plassey would have never found a place in the records of history. Number 6, thus ended the famous Battle of Buxar, on which depended the fate of India, which was as gallantly fought as was important in its results. So write about the Battle of Buxar and significance of it. The system of a sponsored state, controlled but not administered, was the one Clive had in his mind for Bengal. So dual government of Bengal, you need to write here. How face of Nawab was maintained, how company got all the powers. By certain of his actions, Clive marked the usefulness and glory of his works, achievements and limitations both in nature and idea. Question number 9. The Pindaris for the first Maratha war, the British for the first Maratha war at a period when their fortunes were at lowest ebb. So, comment critically. Or the second, nature question, do you agree with this statement? Give your views. So we will discuss the different challenges and write how the fortunes of company were really on downhill. Treaty of Salbai was neither honorable to English nor advantageous to their interest. Both dimensions you need to analyze, short term as well as the long term. Short term, neither advantageous nor honorable. Long term, immensely beneficial. The Treaty of Bassein was a step which changed the footing on which the English stood in Western India. Commercial entity became political power. It trebled English responsibilities in an instant. The English Empire, English territories became 3 times. The responsibilities became 3 times as a result of Treaty of Bassein. The last one, the Hunt of Pindaris, got merged into Third Anglo-Maratha War. So write about the Hunt of Pindaris and then link it to outbreak of Third Anglo-Maratha War. Dear students, in today's class we will study the Anglo-Mysore Wars, annexation of Sindh and the annexation of Punjab. Let us start with the introduction to Anglo-Mysore Wars. The kingdom of Sultan's posturing became his undoing by the interests. Number 1. Why Mysore was considered a threat by British to their positions and mercantile interests. So all the factors we have discussed about the causes of conflict between Mysore and company, you need to write here. Do you think that Tipu Sultan's posturing became his undoing? Posturing means his attempts to strengthen himself internally to get help from Turkey or France. So these posturing elements were not the cause of war. The cause of war was that these posturing elements did not result in sufficient strength. These posturings were taken as an excuse or were used as an excuse by Cornwallis to mobilize the support of Nizam and Marathas. It was the desire of Cornwallis to eliminate the challenge of Mysore. It was the offensive policy of Cornwallis that made the war inevitable. It was not due to the activities of Tipu Sultan as such. Second, without making our friends stronger, we have made our enemy weaker. So this was a comment made by Cornwallis after Third Anglo-Mysore War, right about the gains and how most of the gains were pocketed by English company itself. Examine the circumstances which led to Third Mysore War. Could Cornwallis have avoided it? Definitely Cornwallis could have avoided it. Write about all the factors we have discussed. Tipu Sultan was trying to build in Mysore a strong centralized and military state with ambitious territorial designs. So write about Tipu Sultan's desire to have a very powerful state. He was building his military. He was building his economy. He was not building a military state as such. This is a matter of criticism. He was quite welfare oriented to his people. He issued donations to the Muslim mosque as well as the Hindu temples. So that much you have to understand. Critically examine means he was not looking for a military state. He was looking for a powerful state so that the threat of English company could be countered successfully. And this failed because he was defeated by English in the Third Anglo-Mysore War. And then write about Treaty of Seringapatinam in brief. He failed ultimately. We have no right to seize Sindh, yet we shall do so. A very advantageous, useful, human piece of rascality it will be. Comment made by Charles Napier about annexation of Sindh. We have discussed all the issues. So write about the circumstances leading to annexation of Sindh and how this annexation of Sindh was not justified. Because this was carried out by violating all the promises of friendship which company had made with Amirs of Sindh in the last 40 years. British conquest of Sindh was both a political and moral sequel to First Afghan War. So political and moral issues created by Afghan War were responsible for it. Right, both the dimensions which we have discussed in detail. Number 7, Punjab's fate was, after Ranjit Singh was foredoomed, as the impulse of neo-Victorian imperialism was bound to overwhelm it. Victoria sat on throne in 1837. She remained on throne till 1901. And with her rise, you see, tripartite treaty, war in Afghanistan, annexation of Sindh, war with Punjab in 1840-46, First Anglo-Sikh War, annexation of Punjab, all these things were happening all around. Annexation of Satara, Jaipur, Sambalpur, Bhagat, Udaipur, Jhansi, Nagpur were the reflection of the same. So the coronation of Queen Victoria started a new phase in the history of British imperialism. Lord Dalhousie in India was the greatest representative of the same. So he was waiting for annexation of Punjab and he carried it out with utmost speed. So it was bound to overwhelm it because Punjab was economically significant, Punjab was strategically very significant. Underline the major considerations of the British imperial power that led to annexation of Punjab. So we have discussed all the issues. political as well as the economic. So write all these answers in 300 words for 20 students. In today's class, we will study the policies of Governor Generals and the phases of British imperialism in India. In the first part of today's class, we'll see the major policies, the contributions of different Governor Generals, and thereafter in part number 2, we'll see the manner in which British rule in India was established and it expanded in different parts of India. So, the part number 1 of today's class, the first topic, policies of Governor Generals. In these Governor Generals, you need to study about Warren Hastings, the first Governor General of Bengal. What was his contribution? Contribution of Cornwallis, contribution of Wallace against independence, or when British paramountcy lapsed. So these were the phases of British imperialism in India. Now let us see the questions. Clive was the founder of British Indian Empire. Warren Hastings was the administrative organizer. So from yesterday's class, pick up the role of Clive. From today's class, pick up the role of Warren Hastings. Clive started the process. He was not the founder, so that is critical aspect. Warren Hastings consolidated the British rule in India. That is the second half of the answer. Question number 2, examine the essential principles of subsidy land system, all the provisions you have with you. How far did it contribute to making the English company supreme sovereign authority in India? So write its significance for British rule in India. Subsidy lands was a Trojan horse tactic of empire building. So write about the provisions, how Indians were slowly, discreetly disarmed, their independence were taken away, and they were firmly subjugated to the authority of British in India. So provisions and the impact on both. As to the native states, they virtually ceased to exist from the moment they became subsidiary to or protected by company. This comment was made by Karl Marx about the impact of subsidy land system on native states. If you divide the revenue of a country between two governments, so which two governments? The British Indian government or the company's government and the native state, you are sure to cripple the resources of one. Resources of the native ruler were taken away for maintaining the subsidiary force. Almost half of the territories were taken away, or in terms of revenue demand, the demand was of more than 1/3 of the revenue of native state. You are sure to cripple the resources of one and the administration of both, because with those limited resources, none of them could maintain the proper administrative mechanism, or large number of officers to take care of the welfare and progress of people. So start with the answer that this comment was made by Karl Marx in the context of the impact of subsidy land system on Indian native states. Then write about provisions and write about impact on Indian native states. That's the answer to question number 4. Question number 5, Lord Hastings placed British paramountcy on a new footing. So write about the policy of Lord Hastings, how he imparted a new outlook to the policy of British in India. Peace had her victories no less renowned than war. Comment of John Milton. And now in the context of William Bentinck, you need to highlight the significance of his achievements or contributions. All of his achievements were through peaceful methods. During 1757 to 1813, the British endeavored as far as possible to live within ring fence, and beyond that they avoided interaction with native rulers. So write about the first phase, the phase of the policy of ring fence. Why, what, and what was the impact or significance? All these answers should be in 300 words for 20 markers. As always, scan your answers, upload in your account on portal, and keep revising the notes that you need to make from the classes. Every time when you attend the classes, you must have a notebook and pen with you so that you could note down the main points. Still, if you have any doubt, difficulty, any
where